I just want to tell you all how happy I am to be back in the studio, making a picture again. You don't know how much I've missed.
I'm prepared to promise that, what is the phrase, no questions will be asked.
We love to remember old Hollywood as a world of glitter, charm, and timeless legends. But behind those perfect smiles and red carpet moments, some of the biggest stars were hiding the wildest secrets. From bizarre obsessions to scandals that nearly destroyed them, these icons lived lives stranger than any movie they ever made. Buckle up, as we're going to expose the biggest freaks in old Hollywood. And trust me, some of these stories are almost too crazy to believe. Number 20. There was a time when was the man everyone wanted to be. Dashing, brilliant, a record-breaking pilot, and a Hollywood producer who dated the most stunning actresses of the 1930s and 1940s, had it all. But behind the scenes, his life took a darker turn that few saw coming. After a near-fatal plane crash in 1946, something inside seemed to change forever. By the early 1950s, he had begun locking himself away in hotel rooms, disappearing from public life almost entirely. Staff who worked for him later described bizarre scenes, sitting naked for days, terrified of germs, refusing to touch anything without layers of tissue. He reportedly demanded that anything he might need, from food to writing materials, be handed to him wrapped carefully to avoid contamination. Things only worsened by 1957 when he moved into the Desert Inn in Las Vegas. He took over the top floors and sealed himself off from the world, often urinating in jars because he refused to leave his suite. His fingernails and hair grew long and wild, and he issued increasingly strange orders to employees, such as forbidding sunlight from entering his rooms. Biographers and former aides have documented these haunting years, painting a tragic picture of a man once adored by millions, now living in isolation, gripped by his own fears. It's hard not to wonder, how does someone so powerful and loved end up trapped by their own mind? Number 19. Fatty. In the early 1900s, Roscoe Fatty was one of Hollywood's biggest stars, literally and figuratively. Audiences adored him for his lovable charm, quick humor, and surprising grace for a man of his size. He was one of the first true movie comedians, earning over $1 million a year by 1918, an unheard-of fortune at the time. Kids wanted to be him, and adults couldn't get enough of his slapstick adventures on the big screen. But behind the scenes, his wild side was spiraling out of control. Everything came crashing down on Labor Day weekend in 1921. Through a lavish party at the Francis Hotel in San Francisco, a wild, alcohol-soaked event during Prohibition, when alcohol was illegal. At the party, actress Virginia fell severely ill and later died, was accused of misconduct and manslaughter, facing 3 highly publicized trials between 1921 and 1922. Although he was ultimately acquitted, the damage was done. Details that emerged, the heavy drinking, the reckless behavior, and disturbing rumors about what really happened in that hotel room, painted a very different picture of the man America once adored. His movies were pulled from theaters, and he became a Hollywood outcast overnight. The scandal revealed a hidden side of, not the jolly comedian everyone loved, but a man whose out-of-control lifestyle made him one of old Hollywood's most tragic and controversial figures. Number 18. In the 1930s and 1940s was the ultimate screen hero. With his devilish grin, sword-fighting skills, and effortless charm, audiences fell head over heels for him in classics like Captain Blood and The Adventures of Robin Hood. Wasn't just admired, he was idolized as the perfect blend of gentleman and rogue. But off-screen, the real lived much closer to the reckless, wild characters he portrayed. In 1942, his dangerous lifestyle caught up with him when he was arrested and put on trial for misconduct involving 2 underage girls. The case rocked Hollywood. Although was acquitted in early 1943, the courtroom details, wild parties, heavy drinking, and questionable behavior permanently tarnished his golden boy image. From that point on, the phrase "in like" became part of American slang, hinting at his notorious reputation for chasing physical intimacy and living without limits. Stories of drunken brawls, affairs with both fans and co-stars, and outrageous behavior flooded the tabloids. Didn't seem to care. He leaned into his bad boy image, even bragging about it in his 1959 memoir, My Wicked, Wicked Ways. What made audiences fall in love with him on the screen, that sense of danger and rebellion, was exactly what made his real life spiral into chaos. Wasn't just playing a rogue in the movies, he was living it every single day, for better or worse. Number 17. In the golden age of Hollywood and Broadway, there was no one quite like. Audiences adored her for her deep, smoky voice, razor-sharp wit, and fearless performances in hits like The Little Foxes and Alfred's Lifeboat. She was a true original, a woman who refused to be boxed in, and people loved her for it. But behind the stage lights and camera flashes, her life was a whirlwind of shocking behavior that even by today's standards would turn heads. By the early 1930s, was notorious for throwing wild parties where she openly flirted with both men and women. She didn't just break social rules, she smashed them. She once famously said, "I have tried everything once," a statement she repeated proudly during interviews and even court appearances. There were countless real incidents, like flashing guests at formal dinners just for a laugh, or loudly boasting about her private adventures at events where most people tried to maintain polite conversation. Her boldness wasn't just gossip. It was well documented in newspapers, interviews, and courtroom testimonies throughout the 1930s and 1940s. Instead of hiding, seemed to delight in shocking the public, turning her outrageous antics into part of her larger-than-life legend. She was fearless, unpredictable, and completely unfiltered, the kind of star who made you wonder what she would do next. In a town full of polished images, proudly stood out as Hollywood's beautiful, brilliant, and most lovable wild child. Number 16. Montgomery Clift. In the late 1940s and early 1950s, Montgomery Clift was Hollywood's golden boy, a heartthrob with soulful eyes and a rare, quiet intensity that set him apart from the louder leading men of his time. Clift wasn't just handsome. He was real, vulnerable, and so full of emotion that people felt they truly knew him. But behind that magnetic screen presence, Montgomery Clift was fighting battles that few could see. On the night of May 12, 1956, everything changed. Leaving a party at Elizabeth Taylor's home, Clift crashed his car into a telephone pole in Beverly Hills. The accident left his face badly disfigured, and something inside him seemed to break, too. Friends and co-stars later revealed that after the crash, Clift spiraled into addiction, using alcohol and painkillers to numb the physical and emotional pain. By the late 1950s, it became painfully clear. He often arrived on film sets so high that he could barely remember his lines, needing help just to get through a scene. His once bright career dimmed under the weight of his struggles, and the man who once captivated millions with his raw honesty became a ghost of his former self. Biographers called this period the longest suicide in Hollywood history, as Clift slowly self-destructed before everyone's eyes, a beautiful soul lost to his own inner demons. Number 15. In the 1930s and 1940s, audiences adored her for her fierce ambition, stunning beauty, and unforgettable performances in films like Pierce, which won her an Academy Award. She was the star who had seemingly risen from nothing, a poor girl from Texas who became a queen of the silver screen. But behind the dazzling smile and elegant gowns, his private world was much darker and far more disturbing than anyone guessed. In 1978, her adopted daughter Christina released the shocking memoir Dearest, pulling back the curtain on its carefully crafted image. Christina described years of mistreatment and cruelty, including obsessive control over every detail of their lives. Its extreme obsession with cleanliness and perfection was documented not only in the memoir, but by former staff and friends who recalled her scrubbing floors herself late into the night and punishing her children for the smallest mistakes. One of the most infamous incidents, detailed in Dearest, involved reportedly exploding in rage over wire hangers, a story that became forever linked to her legacy. Instead of the loving mother she portrayed in public, was revealed as someone who demanded total control, often through fear and intimidation. She wasn't just a movie star, she was a woman battling her own deep insecurities, and tragically her children and those closest to her paid the highest price. Number 14. James Dean. In the 1950s, James Dean was the face of youthful rebellion. Audiences instantly connected with his raw, restless energy in films like East of Eden and Rebel Without a Cause. Dean wasn't just acting, he was living the role. People adored him because he made vulnerability look cool and loneliness feel relatable. But off-screen, James Dean carried the same reckless spirit into real life, often pushing boundaries just to feel alive. By 1955, Dean had developed a dangerous love for fast cars and risky driving. Friends and co-stars warned him constantly, but Dean brushed it off as part of who he was. He was ticketed multiple times for speeding around Hollywood in his, racing through the canyons and city streets at terrifying speeds. In one eerie moment just weeks before his death, Dean even filmed a public service announcement warning young people about driving safely, but couldn't resist cracking a joke about how he might not follow his own advice. On September 30, 1955, Dean's obsession with speed ended in tragedy. Driving his silver 550, he collided with another car at an intersection near California. James Dean was just 24 years old when he died, his life frozen in time as the ultimate symbol of reckless youth. His fans adored his wild, untamed spirit, but that same spirit also made him a legend gone far too soon. Number 13. Peter had a face and voice that audiences never forgot. In the 1930s and 1940s, he was adored for playing unforgettable characters: the nervous villain, the haunted outcast, the sly sidekick. Throughout the 1940s, developed a bizarre fascination with death and the macabre. Friends and colleagues claimed he loved collecting odd, morbid artifacts, including old embalming tools and bizarre props from horror films. His friendships with other horror legends like Bela weren't just professional. They shared a genuine love for the darker side of life. There were even rumors that kept a few of these strange items displayed proudly in his home, much to the discomfort of visitors. Unlike most stars who hid their oddities, seemed to embrace his weirdness fully. He wasn't just acting creepy. He was a little creepy in the most fascinating way. In a Hollywood filled with polished smiles and polished lives, Peter stood out as the lovable oddball who blurred the lines between the haunted roles he played and the haunted life he quietly lived. Number 12. Davis. Davis wasn't just a star, she was a force of nature. In the 1930s and 1940s, audiences adored her for her fierce spirit, powerful performances, and those unforgettable eyes that seemed to see right through you. Throughout the 1940s, Davis earned a reputation for being one of the most difficult stars in the business. Her on-set battles became the stuff of legend. During the filming of Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, in 1962, her feud with exploded. She reportedly insulted non-stop, demanded special treatment, and even went so far as to physically shove her co-star during a rehearsal scene, an incident that had crew members holding their breath. But it wasn't just. Over the years, Davis stormed off sets, threw screaming fits at directors, and fought for creative control in ways that shocked traditional Hollywood. Yet somehow, all that fire only made fans love her more. Davis wasn't interested in being sweet or easy to work with, she was there to make history. And in doing so, she proved that sometimes being a little freakish is exactly what it takes to become unforgettable. Number 11. West. West was the queen of double meaning, charm, and pure confidence. In the 1920s and 1930s, audiences adored her because she said the things everyone else only dared to think. With her witty one-liners, sassy walk, and unapologetic attitude, became a symbol of independence and boldness, long before Hollywood was ready for a woman like her. But didn't just play the rebel on stage, she lived it in real life. In 1926, wrote, produced, and starred in a play bluntly titled Sex, a daring move that shook New York City to its core. Authorities were not amused. She was arrested for corrupting the morals of youth, and in April 1927, West spent 8 days in jail on Welfare Island. Instead of hiding in shame, she used the moment to build her legend, proudly posing for photos and giving interviews about the experience. Her time behind bars only made her more famous, proving that knew exactly how to turn scandal into power. Throughout her career, kept pushing boundaries, refusing to let Hollywood or society dictate how a woman should behave. She flirted openly, wrote her own rules, and never apologized for it. In a world that demanded women be quiet and modest, West stood tall, bold, and absolutely unforgettable. She wasn't just an entertainer, she was a one-woman revolution, and she did it all with a wink and a wicked smile. Number 10. Welles. When Citizen hit theaters in 1941, Welles was hailed as a genius, a boy wonder who had revolutionized cinema at just 25 years old. Audiences and critics adored him for his bold creativity, his booming voice, and his fearless storytelling. Welles was the man who could do it all: act, write, direct, and mesmerize. But as his fame grew, so did his chaotic, larger-than-life behavior, and the genius everyone once celebrated soon became one of Hollywood's most unpredictable forces. Throughout the 1940s and 1950s, Welles burned through millions of dollars on projects that he often never finished. Instead of following studio schedules, he would disappear for months, traveling the world or jumping onto other personal passion projects that left backers furious. Real contracts and lawsuits from that time show just how messy things got. Welles became known for promising studios one thing and delivering something completely different, or worse, delivering nothing at all. By 1955, he had gained a reputation for treating cast and crew terribly on set, often being late, changing scripts at the last minute, and leaving productions in complete chaos. His brilliance was undeniable, but so was the madness that came with it. Welles wasn't just a creative genius, he was a hurricane of ambition, ego, and broken promises. In the end, he showed the world that sometimes, the line between genius and self-destruction is much thinner than it looks. Number 9. Beau. In the roaring 1920s, Beau was the ultimate it girl. Audiences adored her for her magnetic energy, playful spirit, and raw, natural beauty that leapt off the silent movie screens. She wasn't polished like other stars. She was real, lively, and full of life, making her one of the biggest box office draws by 1927. Represented freedom and fun during a time when the world desperately craved both. But behind the charming smile and lively screen persona, Beau's real life was far wilder and more heartbreaking than most people ever knew. By 1930, at the very height of her fame, became the target of a brutal blackmail scandal. A former employee stole private letters and sensitive information about her personal life, including details about wild Hollywood parties, gambling debts, and rumored physical intimacy, and threatened to expose it all to the press. Court records from the time show that was dragged into a very public legal nightmare, with tabloids eagerly feasting on every rumor. Already struggling with intense pressure and anxiety, the scandal triggered a series of emotional breakdowns. From the spotlight, overwhelmed by the brutal judgment of a public that once adored her. Her fall from grace was swift and cruel, a painful reminder that in Hollywood, the same crowd that lifts you up can just as quickly tear you apart. Beau wasn't just a star, she was a young woman swallowed up by fame and betrayal. Number 8. In the silent film era, no one captured the public's imagination quite like. Audiences were mesmerized by her dark eyes, exotic costumes, and magnetic screen presence. She was Hollywood's original vamp, a woman who could enchant and destroy men with a single look. Films like A Fool There Was 1915 made her an overnight sensation, and fans adored her as a daring symbol of mystery and forbidden desires. But behind the screen, much of his image was pure invention, and it led to some truly bizarre moments that blurred the line between fantasy and reality. Studio executives at Fox were so eager to market her as a real-life sorceress that by 1917, they began creating outlandish stories about her. They claimed she was born in the Sahara Desert, raised by mystical beings, and schooled in the dark arts. Played along, attending staged, occult events dressed in flowing robes, heavy eye makeup, and jewelry that looked straight out of a Gothic novel. She even appeared at fake, satanic ceremonies, where fans truly believed she had powers beyond the screen. Though it was all a publicity stunt, his willingness to live inside the eerie character made her seem almost otherworldly and a little freakish to those who didn't know better. In a Town Built on Illusion became a living legend, blurring the line between star and myth, reality and fantasy, in a way few have ever matched. Number 7. In the 1950s, was the face of a new kind of acting, raw, real, and deeply emotional. Fans adored him for his unpredictable energy, brooding looks, and the sense that he was somehow larger than life. But that same wild spirit that made him a legend on screen often made him a nightmare behind the scenes. Throughout the 1950s and 1960s, stories from film sets revealed just how far his antics could go. Directors reported that he would sabotage scenes by intentionally mumbling his lines, refusing to memorize dialogue, or even dropping his pants mid-take to throw his co-stars off. During the filming of Mutiny on the Bounty, 1962, his behavior became so disruptive, including constant script changes and showing up drunk, that the production went massively over budget, and the director reportedly suffered a complete breakdown. Instead of following Hollywood's polished rules, seemed to delight in breaking them. His rebelliousness was so extreme that it both fascinated and infuriated everyone who worked with him. Wasn't just an actor, he was a force of chaos, constantly blurring the line between genius and madness. To fans, he was thrillingly real. To those behind the camera, he was the most brilliant freak Hollywood had ever seen. Number 6. Liberace. Fans adored him for his larger-than-life personality, warm smile, and the magical fantasy he created on stage. To the world, Liberace was pure charm and sparkle, a man who could turn even the simplest concert into a... But behind all that glitter, his private life was full of secrets, control, and shocking extremes that only came to light much later. In the early 1980s, Liberace faced one of his biggest scandals when his former lover filed a $113 million lawsuit against him. The case, which began in 1982, exposed a side of Liberace that few fans could have imagined. Documents and testimonies revealed how Liberace allegedly manipulated and controlled his life, from ordering plastic surgery to make him resemble Liberace's younger self, to keeping him financially and emotionally dependent. Throughout his life, Liberace fought hard to keep his personal world hidden, filing secret lawsuits and paying hefty settlements to silence anyone who might threaten his carefully crafted public image. In an era when being openly gay could destroy a career, he lived in constant fear, yet behind closed doors, his need for control often veered into disturbing territory. To his fans, Liberace was pure joy and fantasy. But off-stage, he was a man trapped in a world of secrets, illusions, and carefully managed chaos. Number 5. Perkins. In the late 1950s and early 1960s, Perkins was the definition of the sensitive leading man. Audiences adored him for his gentle charm, boyish looks, and the quiet intensity he brought to every role. His unforgettable performance as Norman Bates in Alfred's Psycho, 1960, made him a household name, forever linking him to one of cinema's most chilling characters. But behind the fame and flashing cameras, Perkins carried deep personal struggles that shaped his life in ways the public never saw. At a time when being openly gay could destroy a Hollywood career, Perkins lived in constant fear of exposure. Throughout the 1950s and 1960s, he engaged in secret, turbulent relationships, battling immense pressure to hide who he truly was. Public records, letters, and accounts from close friends reveal a young man tormented by confusion, isolation, and depression. In a desperate attempt to fit Hollywood's expectations, Perkins even entered into a highly publicized relationship with actress Victoria Principal in the early 1970s, though insiders knew it was mostly a cover. His repressed identity and internal battles bled into his work, giving his performances a haunted, almost fragile quality that audiences felt but couldn't fully understand. Perkins wasn't just playing broken characters, he was one, living in a world that forced him to hide his truest self. The same vulnerability that made millions love him on screen also trapped him off screen, turning his life into a quiet, heartbreaking struggle for acceptance. Number 4. Jean. In the early 1930s, Jean was Hollywood's shining star, the original bombshell. Audiences adored her for her dazzling beauty, playful charm, and a kind of raw innocence hidden beneath her bold screen persona. Films like Hell's Angels, 1930, and Dinner at 8, 1933, turned her into one of MGM's most valuable and beloved stars. To millions, Jean was the symbol of fun and freedom in a world still recovering from hard times. But behind the glittering image, her real life was filled with darkness, control, and mystery that few ever saw coming. In 1932, Jean married Byrne, a powerful MGM executive who, behind closed doors, was deeply troubled. Friends and insiders later claimed that Byrne was so controlling he once locked Jean in their home for days, forbidding her to leave or even see friends. Just 2 months into their marriage, on September 5, 1932, Byrne was found dead in their Beverly Hills home under suspicious circumstances. Though officially ruled a suicide, rumors of foul play and hidden scandals haunted Jean's life from that day on. Tragically, Jean herself would not live long past the whispers and shadows. In 1937, at just 26 years old, she died suddenly from kidney failure, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions and broken hearts. To the public, Jean was the bright, carefree star they loved. But behind her smile was a young woman trapped in a world far darker than any of her movies ever showed. Number 3. In the 1920s was the ultimate screen idol, the Latin lover who made audiences swoon with just a glance. Women adored him for his dark, smoldering looks and emotional performances, while men often and sometimes mocked his smooth, passionate style. But behind the fame's life was filled with controversy, strange rumors, and scandals that only grew after his death. In 1919, secretly married actress Jean, but the marriage turned into a bizarre scandal. Reportedly locked him out of their hotel room on their wedding night, and the marriage quickly fell apart. Was later arrested for bigamy when he tried to marry his second wife, before his first divorce was finalized, a shocking public embarrassment that newspapers gleefully covered. Throughout his career, tabloids often attacked, labeling him effeminate and questioning his masculinity, something that deeply wounded the proud star. Yet none of the rumors dimmed the public's love for him. When died suddenly at just 31 years old in August 1926, thousands of heartbroken fans crowded into his funeral home in New York, and it's said that several women even fainted at the sight of his coffin. Wasn't just a star, he was a phenomenon, adored and misunderstood in equal measure, both in life and in death. Number 2. Gloria. In the 1920s, Gloria was Hollywood royalty. Audiences adored her for her stunning beauty, powerful screen presence, and unmatched sense of style. Films like 1928 and Queen Kelly 1929 turned her into one of the most glamorous and highest-paid actresses of the silent film era. People didn't just admire Gloria, they her as the ultimate symbol of success and sophistication. But as the years went on, her grip on reality began to slip, and the fantasy life she created for herself became almost stranger than fiction. By the early 1930s, as talkies took over and her career faltered, Gloria refused to accept her fading star power. Even while facing financial ruin, she insisted on living as if nothing had changed. During bankruptcy proceedings in 1938, famously showed up wearing diamonds, designer gowns, and furs, turning what should have been a humbling moment into another scene from her personal movie. Staff members were still expected to call her Madame, and she continued throwing extravagant parties she could no longer afford. Gloria wasn't just clinging to fame, she was living inside the world she had built, refusing to surrender to reality. To her fans, she remained a symbol of old Hollywood's golden age. But behind the scenes, Gloria's need to preserve her image at all costs made her one of the most fascinating and tragically disconnected figures Hollywood ever produced. Number 1 was the very picture of elegance and talent. Audiences around the world adored her after unforgettable performances in Gone with the Wind and A Streetcar Named Desire. With her delicate beauty, poised accent, and powerful emotional range, she seemed almost otherworldly, a star who made every role unforgettable. But behind the glamour and accolades was fighting battles few could see. Her private life was filled with chaos, heartbreak, and incidents that exposed a much more fragile and troubled soul. Throughout the 1940s and 1950s, struggled with severe mental health issues, later identified as bipolar disorder. During her manic episodes, she would behave in ways that shocked even those closest to her. There were documented incidents, confirmed by her husband, where would strip naked in public, proposition strangers on the street, and sometimes vanish for days without warning. In 1953, during a tour in Australia, She famously had a breakdown so severe that the production had to be canceled mid-run. Her behavior was heartbreaking, not scandalous, the actions of someone battling an invisible enemy inside herself. While the world saw her as a polished, perfect star, lived a life of silent suffering, caught between moments of breathtaking brilliance and heartbreaking collapse. She wasn't just a Hollywood legend. She was a deeply human soul, fighting to stay afloat in a world that only wanted her to be perfect. Who do you think was the biggest freak of them all? Let's talk about it in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this dive into Hollywood's untold secrets, don't forget to subscribe for more stories that pull back the curtain on the legends we thought we knew.